Well, howdy YouTube, Unky Joe here, Unky Joe's Playhouse. Today we're going to have a little fun with one of my Dell R710 servers. Now, I've done this before, what I'm about to show you today, but today's a little bit different because, well, it's best you stay tuned to see why today's a little bit different. So let's take a little trip over to the rack and see which Dell it is that I'm talking about. So there she is, my guard dog, my Z dog. She's protecting my rack. Yeah, she's gonna come give us some love. How's that for a pretty, she's my pretty brown-eyed girl, aren't you? Yeah. So look, I got a cable. Look at there. See, I got a yellow cable running. There's the Synology, the FS1018. Thank you, Sasha. We're putting this thing to work, making good use out of it. Got more videos coming on it. And you see my excellent job of running a Cat5e cable. And of course, you have to protect it by running it under a rug. Sorry about the lousy camera work. I really suck as a cameraman, but all right. So let's follow that in here and you'll see that it is plugging into a 10 gig port on my unified 10 gig switch. Again, thank you again, Sasha, for the donation of that switch. As you can see, we have definitely put this thing to work. And then right here is Hermes. If you look at Hermes, that is running Exponology. That's that little i3 processor machine with what do I have in there? I think I have two 4 terabyte drives and two 3 terabyte drives in there, and it's right now I'm copying data from there down here to the MSHV2, which stands for Microsoft, and you can see the drive lights flashing as I'm copying data to it. And then above that is the custom machine server I built with a Super Micro motherboard. That's running XCP, and it is currently hosting a couple of virtual machines. And then below that is my other Dell with the 2.5-inch drives. That is running Microsoft Hypervisor. And then the one under that is the IBM that I hardly ever use because it's noisy and loud and puts out a lot of heat. It's a good server, but that is also running XCP NG as well as the one I built up here. So there's the current status of the rack, and we're going to be talking about the Microsoft Hypervisor 2 machine, the one with the 3.5-inch drive. So on the right-hand side, this is the last of those 1 terabyte drives I had in that Dell server. The Dell R710, I should say, that has the 6 3.5-inch hard drives in it. And so, you know, these drives are back from 2011, so they're, 8 years old. They've served their purpose, and they're starting to fail and get bad sectors. So as you know, we put all new 4 terabyte and 3 terabyte drives in my Exponology NAS. My Synology NAS has a combination of 4 terabyte and 6 terabyte drives in there. And so what I've decided to do is put all 2 terabyte drives in that Dell R710. And we're going to do something a little different on that unit today now that I have all these 2 terabyte drives together. This drive is nothing special. I paid $30 for this drive off of Amazon. It's a white label 2 terabyte drive. Comes in a nondescript black or brown box. They call it a white label 2 terabyte NAS with a 1-year warranty, and it's new. So I don't know who makes these drives. If any of you out there know who might be the actual manufacturer of these drives, if it's they've all got to come out of the same factory somewhere. So whether it's Western Digital or HGST or Seagate or... Now the drive is called a MediaMax 2 terabyte drive, and it's just like I bought another one of these last month and used it. And part of the plan is this is not real critical data that's going to be stored on here, so if they go bad, it's no big deal. This is my archival storage, and it's really kind of one of my test units. And you know, my biggest problem with these Dells is I cannot stand having 6 drive bays without 6 drives in them, because I'm crazy that way. So there's the drive itself, Media Max, right there. Just give you a look-see of the drive. All right, so we'll hand this over to Jerry now and follow him around to the server closet. Jerry is the official drive putter inner person, so I will hand this over to him, and then we'll follow his skinny bald ass into the room and see him shove a stick of drive in a server. Ow. And the reason I do this is because Jerry is much better at getting on his knees than I am. He's married. That's pretty funny. Okay, and there you go. The drive is installed. So now every one of those drive bays is populated with a 2 terabyte drive. Some of them are years old, some of them are a month old, and some of them are brand new. And this also has an SSD drive in the CD-ROM drive tray, so that I can actually boot an operating system off of there, and then still have all 6 drives available. So there's the Dell server we're going to be using for this. Now, if you've watched this channel for any length of time, you know my original goal with these Dells was to get them, and my pipe dream has always been to run Exponology on one of these Dells. But there are several things that keep me from running Exponology on the Dells. And that is the network cards in the Dell are not compatible with Exponology. The underlying operating system for Synology isn't going to be able to make use of all the cores. The hypervisor built into Exponology or into Synology requires a license. So as time has progressed, I have tried any number of enumerations on this Dell to get it to run Exponology. Now, the one success I did have, and I did a video about this quite a while ago, was actually loading ESXi 6.7 on there and then running Exponology as a virtual machine. So I have, with Jerry's help, I've kind of given up the idea of running Exponology on these Dells. And why? Why would I want to run Exponology on them? I have a Synology server, a NAS. I have an Exponology machine that is running my home media, and that should be fine. What I really want this Dell to do is to host storage for my network, because you can never have enough storage on your network. Now, as you know, I have filled this Dell before with 1 terabyte drives, 500 gigabyte drives, etc., etc. And all the drives I've stocked it with have been older drives that I've had for years. Well, they've started failing, especially the 1 terabyte drives. And as you've seen on some of my other videos, I've been purchasing 2 terabyte drives to replace the 1 terabyte drives. And now I have managed to buy and fill that server with all 2 terabyte drives. So there are a total of 6 2 terabyte drives in this Dell now. And I was able to put an SSD drive in there, a 256 gig SSD drive in the CD-ROM tray. Now, the other thing I managed to do with this server is buy a pre-flashed a SAS controller, a 6 gig SAS controller, a Dell, that has been flashed into IT mode. So what it does is it basically takes RAID out of the hardware RAID out of the equation and directly passes the disk through to whatever operating system you're going to be using it for. It just gives you a little bit better control of the drives. I'm not a big fan of hardware RAID anymore. I just don't think it's necessary, my personal opinion. So I prefer to use software RAID or some derivation of that. So what I've elected to do is run Windows Server 2019 on there. I have licenses for it, so why not? Might as well use it. And I'm using my old friendly standby forever loved program called Drive Bender to put all the drives into one big drive pool. And then the other benefit drive pool allows me is you can mirror selected directories under there. So whereas RAID 1 is you have to mirror both drives and you lose a bunch of capacity that way, and for an example, you lose half of the capacity in a RAID 1. This way it allows me to use all 6 drives, so 2 times 6 is 12 terabytes of storage. But with overhead and all, you end up getting about 9 or 10 terabytes of storage, even with Drive Bender. And then then what I can do is on a directory or directory by directory basis, I can choose what files I want to mirror. So I can do duplication on those files. The other thing Drive Bender really is good at is monitoring the health of those drives and warning you when something happens. Now the other thing I've done in that Dell, as you know, it has a Mellanox 10 gig SFP Plus network card in there. And through the generous donation of Sasha in the UK, who might as well be my sugar daddy, Sasha, just kidding, he donated a 10 gig switch for our network stack. So now I have 10 gig connectivity to that Dell server. Even though I have spinning Rust drives in there, I in theory should be able to get 200 to 300 megabytes per second across my network between machines that have 10 gig network cards in them. I purchased a fiber card to go into my workstation here so that eventually I will give up my 1 gigabit connection and go with a 10 gigabit connection. I'm slowly phasing in 10 gigabit, in other words, because really I don't have any need for it. Well, we all have need for 10 gig, but let me phrase it this way. Currently, I don't have storage that's fast enough to keep up with 10 gig. So like I say, with spinning Rust, using Drive Bender in that server, I'm probably going to be able to get 200 to 300 megabytes transfer speeds. But I'll be able to get pretty close, double my throughput on my storage array. And, basically this is going to be just archival storage, test storage, stuff for the lab, that kind of thing. But it's nice to have those 2 terabyte drives in there, 6 of them. It just gives me a little more flexibility. So let's go see how I've got that server configured. So I've gone on about Drive Bender for ever since I've started my channel, and there's a reason why. Because it just works, it works well, and for my use it works really well for me. So if you've got a bunch of hard drives and you don't want to necessarily put them in a RAID 5 array or a RAID 10 array or a RAID 6 array, what Drive Bender allows you to do is pool the drives and then go out and actually, if there's a specific share or folder you want to duplicate to have a backup copy of data, you can do that through this little link here, and I'll show you that in a minute. But right now I am transferring files from my Exponology NAS. I'm taking some video files from there and transferring it onto my my Dell running Drive Bender and Windows Server 2019. So that's what you're seeing right now, and all the drives again are set up. There's 6 2 terabyte drives. Now, I know I'm going to get a lot of people going, or yelling at me going, yeah, but with free NAS you get ZFS. Okay, yeah, great. Well, with Windows Server 2019 and 2016 and 2012, I believe, you get REFS file system, which supposedly prevents bit rot as effectively as ZFS does. So anyway, I'm copying data currently at 110, 120 megabytes per second, which is probably the best my gigabit Ethernet is going to do. And as you can see, it is writing. The thing I like about Drive Bender on the display, it shows you the IOPS on the devices and your write speed and read speed. And it'll even tell you what files and folders it is writing to if you click on File and Folder Access. So the other benefit of using Drive Bender is that it has the smart status. So I can come in here and I can check the smart status on a drive. Now, a lot of people are concerned that Drive Bender is a proprietary program and it writes the files and folders in a proprietary format. And to some extent that's true, but it doesn't really do it that way. It puts little markers and headers on directories so that Drive Bender knows what belongs where. But in the event that your server were to crash and you were to need to pull the drives out, you can take them and put them in any Windows machine and you'll be able to get the data off the drives. Now, I have shown you before how to add and remove drives from Drive Bender and how seamless it is. So basically, if you go to remove a drive from Drive Bender, it will then copy all the data off that drive to the remainder of the storage space you have available in the pool. Then you can take the drive out, put a new one in, add it back to Drive Bender, and Drive Bender will automatically rebalance the drive a few hours after you've installed it back into the system. So with Drive Bender, it's really a win-win kind of situation to use it, and I can't say enough good things about it. Some are concerned about continued development on it, but I tell you, I wouldn't use it for my system if I wasn't comfortable about it being rock solid, and knock on wood, I've had hardly any trouble at all with DriveBender. And any of the trouble I did have was of my own making. So, and it, gives you the nice little pie chart. You can see what's going on. It also has some advanced functionality that I'll cover at some point in the future, but I'm not going to go into it right now. But the big thing is that it allows you to have something like RAID 1 without eating up all the hard drive space, and that's called duplication. So I just basically go into duplication, as I've shown you before, and I go to my shares, or I go to my folders, and I can turn duplication on or off for whatever folders, or if I wanted to go down into subfolders, I could do that too. So say, for example, I wanted all my YouTube videos and my TechVid videos to have another, to be duplicated on another drive, just in case of failure. Well, it's just simply a matter of coming here, selecting the folder, and enabling duplication on the selected folder, or in the selected folder in all child folders. And when I do that, just click on it. It tells me, are you sure you want to apply it? Tell it yes. And it'll go out in the background and start duplicating the files in that folder and spreading it out amongst several drives. And you'll see it can read and write to multiple drives at one time. That's one of the other benefits, nice things about DriveBender. It just handles all that in the background. And you can see my write speeds per second. This is a serial ATA or a SAS controller, 6 gigabit. You're never going to achieve that speed, but you get pretty close to it, about 200 to 300 megabytes per second. Considering all the overhead you've got with the operating system and everything else. So now, one of the other benefits of running my servers in this way and actually using it as a file storage server, these Dells have multi-core. Actually, they have 2 CPUs in here, 2 E5640s, and so I get a total of 16 logical processors with 8 cores on each socket. So I can also do virtualization on here, and I've got plenty of RAM in this thing to set up some virtual machines if I wanted to. And then here is the Mellanox card right here. I just labeled it Gigabit 10-1 so I know what card it is. So you can see the data transfer going back and forth across the card. We're getting near gigabit speed connected to that Exponology NAS as it's transferring data over. But, it just really gives you a lot of flexibility as to what you can do on this. Now, I've tried to recreate this using Linux. I just can't get over the fact that it's all command line based, and I'm a GUI guy. So this is what works out for me. So I've got, not only do I have a storage server for my network, but I can also run virtual machines on here and test things if I needed to. And it's all through a nice little GUI interface, which is what I like. And really, the overhead of Windows, when you compare it to Linux, they're about identical. If I were to set up a Linux server with this kind of performance productivity on it, these kind of applications, I think Windows Server 2019 uses about 1 gig of RAM when it first boots up with nothing else running. It's the same thing with a Linux-based machine. It uses about 1 gig of RAM, and RAM is cheap, especially old server RAM. In fact, I want to take these units up to 128 gig of RAM in each one of them that I have. I have 2 of these Dell R710s and one of the I have an IBM X3650 M3. They're so cheap and they're so ubiquitous on the internet. Spare parts are readily available. They do consume a lot of power. This thing at full bore is probably consuming 2 to 250, maybe even 300 watts of power. I've done the measurements on that before. But again, for the purposes I use it for, this is really a win-win for me to be running Windows Server 2019 on it. Now, the other area where this server is going to come into play is as we start working with our file station FS 1018 that Sasha has given us on loan. We're going to be able to compare speeds, and we're going to be able to do some testing between an SSD array and a spinning Rust array, as I like to call it. So you'll get to see what kind of throughput and speeds we get on there. Currently, that unit behind me, the file flash station 1018, does have a 10 gigabit Ethernet card in there, and I was able to use, I'm actually just using a Cat 5e cable. You can get 10 gig out of a 5e cable up to 45 meters, so they claim. So, and I'll be doing some iPerf tests just to make sure that we're actually getting the throughput we should be. But it'll allow us to use this array and transfer files back and forth to an all SSD array and see what kind of performance you can expect to get if you were to do a 10 gig network at home. Now keep in mind, this 10 gig network is something I've been building for over a year. And the reason I haven't gone gung-ho on it is because you're not really going to achieve 10 gigabit speed unless you've got really all SSD storage set up in a RAID that can deliver the IOPS that you need. So that's another one of the reasons we're checking out this flash station to see what kind of performance it can deliver, real-world performance in a real-world 10 gig network environment. And keep in mind, this is just a home lab setup. You can be doing this at your home lab as well, but before spending the money, I just want you to see it here first, so you can decide whether all the time and effort is going to be worth it to do 10 gig networking. So I guess, for the lack of a better word, we would call this a DIY NAS unit. So if you're not a big fan of free NAS, or if you don't want to do on RAID, or you're a Windows guy like me and you just want to build a NAS to share files out to the network, I cannot think of a better way to do it than to pick up an old used server, cram it full of cheap, inexpensive, well, I won't say cheap, let's say inexpensive spinning Rust drives, and create your own NAS. You can do it. If you can't afford Windows Server 2019, that's fine. Put Windows 10 on there. And go out and buy Drive Bender, because it will give you the best of both worlds. The things you can do with Drive Bender make it much more feasible to me than just doing a regular free NAS or an unraid RAID. Those have their place, but they don't have their place for me right now. So you can grab one of these Dell R710s off the internet for a couple $100, shipped to your home with lots of RAM in them and a couple of dual processors. Now, keep in mind, they do consume 200 to 300 watts, like I said earlier and before. But, if you can afford the power, these make great NAS units. Then go out and get yourself a copy of Windows 10 or Windows Server if you want to run it. In fact, truth be told, you can run Windows Server 2019 for free for 3 years if you know what you're doing, and I've covered that in another video. Or put Windows 10 on there. Go out and buy a copy of Drive Bender. I think they have a 3-user version for $20. You can put it on 3 different machines. And do what I'm about to do, which is set up a NAS running Windows. Drive Bender has its perks over RAID. So why am I showing you this? Well, because this is all part and parcel of this new series of videos we're going to be doing on that flash station, like I said. So I've got a lot of plans to test a lot of things out. You folks have asked me to run some virtual machines on there, see how fast they are. People have asked me to run Plex on there, see how fast it is, that kind of thing. And then I've got some plans of my own just to, want to put maybe an iSCSI share on there and share it out to some lab virtual machines. And so we got lots of stuff coming up while we have this flash station on hand. And getting this unit set up, this Dell set up with Drive Bender, is part and parcel of those series of videos that are coming up. So got that to look forward to. So we hope you found the video entertaining and informative. As always, please give us a thumbs up down below. Subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. I notice we're getting a lot of views on videos from non-subscribers. Well, I encourage you to subscribe to my channel. It just helps me out with monetization, and as you know, if we get monetized, we put all that money back into the channel to buy new stuff, to show you all how we're doing it. I've also got some plans to get the new Raspberry Pi 4 in here as soon as they become available. I think I'm going to buy the whole kit with the keyboard and the mouse and the whole spiel, because I've got something in store for that Raspberry Pi 4 to see if it's feasible. So again, if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know to be notified when new videos come out. Give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down. YouTube doesn't care. They count them. It counts as interaction with the channel, and that's what YouTube likes to see. So thanks again for coming to see us, and please don't forget that we will see you on the other side.